Ladies and gentlemen, we are here and back talking about the New York Giants, back on Giants Talk on this live stream. And as you can see, I'm not here alone. We got my guy Bobby Skinner from the Giants Nation show. Bobby, how you doing, man?
Good, man. Just kind of getting back into the swing of things after a weekend in Charlotte, but all good, dude. Ready to talk some Giants football.
Yes, sir. First off, I just want to ask, man, as far as being on the Giants Nation, starting up that show, man, it's been kicking off. I want to congratulate you, man, because you got a lot of success, obviously translating over there. I'm not surprised. How are you feeling with that transition? Jumping
Good, good. It's been fun. You become a lot busier when you're trying to do like a startup and like cover the NFL draft all in 1 month. So I've been able to like kind of slow down and plan some things out for training camp and the regular season and stuff. But it's been fun, dude. I mean, the support from the listeners, people like you has been a lot of fun, and I'm like, and the Giants drafted a first round rookie QB, which is like that's always exciting to talk about and cover. So it's fun times in Giants land and for Giants Nation show.
100%. Listen, I think now is kind of the time where it dies down a bit, time to really exhale. But I just wanted to continue to ramp up after what happened in the draft. Everyone in the chat right now, man, once again, we're going to be covering a couple different topics. If you have any questions to ask Bobby, we're going to be doing that towards the end. So definitely be prepared with that. Shout out to Ryan's Big Blue Podcast in the building, my dog Christian in the building, and Just One NYG in the building. Once again, if you got any questions, feel free to type it up. And we're going to jump right into it. So, obviously, right now going on in Giants land, we got OTAs taking place at the moment. So I want to let you know right now, man, or I want to see where you're at. How are you feeling after these OTAs? We got a couple of photos, a couple of videos to bite off of. How are you feeling after seeing what's going on at OTAs?
Yeah, it's what I'm interested in is like the information, right? Performance and OTAs is if it's good, it doesn't. I remember Daniel Jones threw 5 touchdowns in the first day of OTAs, and it's like, okay, what does that mean? And then but if it's bad, we're not going to sit here and be like, oh my gosh, this team is screwed. Like I don't want to overreact to like what's actually happening, especially I don't get to see it with my eyes, so I'm just going off of what other people say. Like, for example, that Jackson Dart, the Jalen Hyatt touchdown, the beat reporters made it seem amazing, and then the Giants put out the clip. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, it was a nice throw, but like this isn't like hype worthy, type of stuff. But what I was looking for is Jackson Dart is getting some first team reps sprinkled in so early on. Like, I think that's an important piece of information of how they want to develop him. And it's like, how do you develop a first round QB when he's your third string quarterback? I think that's pretty important, even though it may ruffle the feathers of Russell Wilson. And then it seems like Mike Kafka is going to be the play caller once again after having that job stripped from him last year.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think right now we're kind of reaching for things to look at, of course. And I think you hit the nail right there talking about Mike Kafka and Jackson Dart, of course. Even once again, that video was like a lob over Bobby Okereke. I've seen people
it was a good throw, but it was like described
was
like it was this insane. I was like, okay, that's a nice red zone throw.
Exactly. I think right now with anything that Jalen Hyatt is going to do, I mean, we got to talk about it because we know what happens on the field. I'm going to definitely get your standpoint on Jalen Hyatt soon. But once again, talking about Jackson Dart, obviously being the big player that he is, and he's going to be the polarizing player throughout this whole year. Even if he's not on the field, he's going to be talked about a lot. But I want to get your outlook on him. Obviously, we know that you were covering the draft and you kind of had a look pre-draft, but you dove into a lot of breakdowns that are happening right now after the draft. So what is your stance on Jackson Dart from pre-draft to post-draft now? Where do you stand on him?
It hasn't changed much. I think now that he's on the Giants, I get a little more like pre-draft. I like, hey, he has pretty good arm talent. But like, there's other issues that I had. I think now that he's on the Giants, I'm putting a little more hope in like the arm talent and the aggression with Brian Daboll and how they can develop that, because pre-draft it was never like, oh, this guy can't develop. It was just kind of what he is. My same worries that I had pre-draft are the same ones, and the things I liked about him pre-draft are the same. I just kind of have a better picture after, again, like I'm doing all 22 on every single throw, even those free access hitches, which they threw over and over again. I think what the two key components for me with Jackson Dart, now that, again, I've really dived into where I'm, by the end of, by middle of June, I'll watch every throw of his from last year like 6-7 times.
Yeah.
We knew he was aggressive, right? Threw the ball deep 22% of the time. Like, that's extremely aggressive. I think it's the highest rate out of any of the first round QBs from the last 3 years. My issue is that I just didn't like how his deep ball just seemed to die out kind of often, right? And the deep ball stats are pretty decent, but when you look at it versus SEC, it's they're not good numbers against the SEC. And I'm going to do a video on that, in the middle of next month. But it's not because he has this noodle weak arm. It's just kind of get into your throws a little better. He's not a Josh Allen talent, but he can throw the ball deep. When he hits, it's about as pretty as a ball as you can see. So it's aesthetically really nice. So it's that. And then the other thing is development wise is how is he going to be going through progressions, quick game, your intermediate game in the NFL, because that was just not really part of the menu a ton at Ole Miss. Like, obviously you're throwing quick passes in intermediate, but it wasn't a lot of reading. It's a lot of like, hey, throw a 7-yard hitch against off coverage, and very defined first read stuff. So it's just, that's the type of stuff where he's going to have to get totally reworked. And that's why I'm not like itching to have him play early.
Yeah. I think even looking at it, I mean, you heard all the noise, and I don't mean to even talk about it too much, but it was Shador. Where is he going? That's what it was the whole time. But even prior to the season ending, I had a lot of people jumping in my comments talking about Jackson Dart, trying to speak on Jackson Dart heading into it when the tail end of last year. And obviously we try to focus on what the team is doing, but we know, unfortunately, our season kind of ends early and we start looking a little bit towards what the draft was looking like. Did you see Jackson Dart as a possibility at all? I mean, I think when you think about Joe Judge and Ole Miss connection, I mean, you can kind of assume, but was he ever a guy that was on your radar?
Yeah, because it became very apparent, or not very apparent, but it seemed pretty apparent that the Giants weren't interested in taking a quarterback 3rd overall. They just weren't operating that way with the way they went after Matthew Stafford and then wanted to wait on Aaron Rodgers until they realized that this was actually going to be a month-long wait. That still hasn't even happened yet.
Still.
Even though he has one option, he still won't sign with that one option. So they got Russ, but then they got Russ and Jameis, and it felt like they were setting themselves up to not take a quarterback at 3. And then the way they went at the pre-draft process, it just felt inevitable. Like, they're going to draft a quarterback. It's not going to be a 3rd overall. So I get to know the Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Tyler Shugg, Kyle McCord guys. And then I guess ended up being Shador Sanders, who, fell to the 5th round as well. So and then the week before the draft, it felt like almost inevitable. It was going to be Jackson Dart when you started to hear some of that smoke. So yeah, he was on my radar. He wasn't early, I will say that. Like, we were at the Senior Bowl, we focused on the quarterbacks there, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, and we weren't like thinking like, maybe this will end up being the Giants quarterback. And the vibe from that was like they're probably going to end up with Shador Sanders at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. I was genuinely shocked, and I know it was talking about the week of. That's kind of where you see things come out. But speaking on Jackson Dart actually being taken in the 1st round and us making that move to trade up was something I mean, like, you were hoping that your GM wasn't shopping hungry. I think you spoke on it a little bit, but I was, content with not taking a quarterback, especially after we got Russell Wilson, because that's where I'm just like, where are we headed after you already have Jameis Winston on the roster? So, I mean, I think there's a certain excitement surrounding a new quarterback, no matter who it would have been. And I think
Right.
Jackson Dart, coming from Ole Miss and breaking Eli Manning's record and being in Eli's corner, like, the guys are going to eat this up. All of the fans are going to eat this up, but it's going to be pretty soon where if we lose a couple games, they're going to be calling for him, pretty often. I don't even want to play the game where we predict when he's going to show up, because, I mean, let's not call the season over with already, but he's going to be called numerous occasions before that even happens. So,
yeah, if he has a good preseason, we'll be calling for him to play, week 1. So again, we did that Charlotte mailbag where I was like, I kind of took a very big picture conversation with that instead of trying to get into the details like I like to. And I think it's just simple. Like, I understand if he's middle of the road, it gets a little muddier and some people defending him and some people saying he's not it. But like, just we're moved out. Like, now they drafted him. I'm still doing all the work on his college stuff like that, throughout the summer. They drafted him. And it's a very simple like expectation for me. At the end of year 2, be good. Be good, or at least make us think you're on that path. Enough to like, let's see, all right, like be good enough to say, all right, we'll give you a year 3, and then if year 3 ends and you're not just the guy, then you move on. After going with 6 years of Daniel Jones, getting new quarterbacks is again, this is the 3rd time the Giants have gotten a starting quarterback in 20 years, right? It's Eli and Warner in 04, Daniel Jones in 2019, and now Russ and Jackson Dart in 2025. In over 20 years, this is the third time really we've had a new starting quarterback for week one, or not week one, but like new quarterback for a reasonable length of time.
Yeah, I mean, and we can even make the argument it's the first quarterback in 20 years to show some emotion or some moxie or anything, which once again, people are going to eat that up. I think people are already talking about, there's already an aura to Jackson Dart being out there with the guys. So I'm definitely intrigued to see, overall
Has
how the team
aura
comes out.
become an
But
ironic word now? Because I see like Evan Neal has aura at like guard. Like I feel like it's becoming an ironic word now.
It 100% is. And even thinking about guys aura farming, they can make the argument Evan Neal does that a pretty good amount of time, but we know what they say about Evan Neal. So yeah, man. I mean, even Jackson Dart, I'm from Florida. I know you're from Florida. Playing Kodak Black, that's the biggest left field I've seen for sure. So he's a guy that's gonna have a good attitude, and people are gonna love to get behind that. So speaking on the other player that was taken in the first round that I feel like is definitely gonna get overshadowed. Maybe I think when the year starts and you don't see Jackson Dart on the field, potentially not. But Abdul Carter obviously was the first pick for us at number 3. Where do you feel on Abdul Carter? I mean, obviously, we're not going to see things out of OTA that you're going to say, wow, the way he, bent that corner on that cone. But what are your expectations for Abdul Carter in his first year? Not even putting a number to it, but his impact being on this team.
Dude, I just show that you're that freak athlete that you are. Like it's just as simple as that. When I said it, before January is over, I was like, outside of Cam Ward, I just don't see myself wanting a guy in this NFL draft more than this guy without even watching other guys. I was like, I just don't see how I'm going to be more impressed than this, with the light watches I've seen of, the other, top projected guys. I think he's a beast, dude. He is enjoyable to watch. And when you have an edge rusher who can just win like that, I think it's the most enjoyable thing to watch in football. Is a guy just go out there and win at the edge, whether it's on over the corner, working outside in. Needs to add more of that, speed to power through you type of stuff to his game. But I think he's going to be an advance for the Giants as a rookie. Like you said, it's hard to predict stats. You even look at Myles Garrett, the best defensive player in the NFL, and he didn't have these crazy rookie numbers. So I'm not going to put these big stat projections, but like I just think he's going to be really disruptive right away.
And for the ones that, obviously we've taken our fair share at the edge rusher position, picked up a couple guys, traded for a couple guys. Some are worried that he can be like a Kayvon Thibodeau 2.0, or even in the sense like a Brian Burns. I was actually a big fan of Brian Burns last year. I feel like, the numbers don't really do him justice. Is there any worries of that? And I mean, you can't really predict, once again, what they're going to do in the league to an extent. But do you see shades of that potentially that could be in his game?
No, I think he's very different than Kayvon Thibodeau. I'm just thinking of myself, watching both, in the draft process. And Kayvon, there was definitely stuff that I really liked, but I didn't see the dominant level of player that an Abdul Carter was, right? Like pre-draft, I would have taken Sauce Gardner over Kayvon Thibodeau. I would have taken Aiden Hutchinson over Kayvon Thibodeau in that draft. Abdul Carter, there was no one besides a quarterback in Cam Ward that I, would have taken over Abdul. And honestly, if you put Abdul in that draft, maybe I'd be wrong, but I'd take him over Aiden Hutchinson. Sauce Gardner, I think would be a little bit of a tie goes to the edge rusher, but that's kind of how I feel about Abdul Carter, where it's just you look for pro comps for him, and it really is Micah Parsons, right? It's not lazy. I know everyone feels like it's dirty to project him to a former off-ball linebacker who went to Penn State and wore number 11, but there's really no other comparison when you just watch the way that guy moves. It's as simple as that. It's not, oh, look at this move, that move. It's just watch the way he moves.
Yeah, man. I mean, me personally, obviously, I'm a fan of the New York Giants. I haven't really got around to watching college football consistently, but when the playoffs roll around, everyone turns on the TV and puts it on. Of course, that game against Notre Dame where he was playing hurt, and we knew he was playing hurt. Just seeing what he was able to do on the field was honestly, why wouldn't you want a guy like that on your team? Especially considering what he did the rest of the season. And we know once you talked about with Micah, he had his shades of playing off-ball linebacker the previous year and playing as an edge rusher last year. Where do you see the Giants using him? I know there's a lot of noise about him being moved around, and you see the clips talking about, playing several positions. Where do you want to see Abdul Carter this upcoming year for his rookie year? we know it's a crowded room. I mean, there's Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau. They're saying you can't play all of them on the field at once. What do you envision?
Yeah, so this is where everyone's like, oh, we got to use him on all over. And sure, you're going to use him in different spots. But I also don't want to get too cute. He's going to line up on the edge, and he's going to win on the edge. Now, when you get on 3rd down and 8, what do I want? I'm going to want Kayvon and Brian Burns as wide edges. I want Dexter Lawrence in 1A gap, and I want Abdul Carter standing in 1. And a lot of those times, some of those times we'll back him out just to keep the offense honest. But most of the time, I want him moving forward and on the line of scrimmage. Again, there'll be some packages putting me on stack linebacker and stuff. But this is, he hasn't played in the NFL, so we're a little intrigued with his versatility and is there. I think he can play those positions well. But I look at Micah Parsons as another example. Cowboys year 1, really, like, there was full games where they just put him at linebacker, specifically against the Giants, right? Like, Micah Parsons, as good as his rookie season was, didn't really do much against the New York Giants, and he was just playing regular linebacker. And the Cowboys finally came to a point where this guy's an edge rusher, let him rush off the edge, and that's where he's going to play. Now, what are we going to do to use his versatility? We're going to line him up in the A gap, right? And we've seen Micah Parsons do that against the Giants, lining up on John Michael Schmitz and Mark Lewinsky and other guys, and really ruining games for the Giants by, almost by himself. So that's the way I want to use his versatility. It is still on the line of scrimmage and moving forward 80% of the time.
I think it has to be. I mean, when you think about, yes, he is a versatile player, but backing him up and dropping him into coverage. I know there's a couple different, series where we saw Brian Burns last year dropping back into coverage. But that's a win for the offense if you're not putting this guy to pin his ears back and get after the quarterback.
Yeah,
I think
again,
that's where he has to be.
Yeah, you're going to have to throw that in there to keep offenses honest and their game plan and stuff, and their when they're setting their pass protection. Like, you're going to have to do a little bit of that. But the large majority needs to be him moving forward.
Yeah, and another, fan remark that's going on right now is it doesn't matter if he can get to the quarterback if he can't stop the run. Do you feel like that's definitely a miscue on his play right now, or I guess a downside on his play?
It is, but it's also he had 20-plus tackles for a loss, so he's going to be disruptive in the run game. But there is going to be times where they get a good tackle on him, he's going to get moved off the edge. Or anytime he gets double teamed by a tackle on a tight end, he's going to get moved off the edge, and it's going to make him easier to run their run game stuff. But what he's also going to do is when he's left one-on-one, he's going to make tackles miss quickly and blow up plays as well. So you just kind of have to let him play like that. Don't ask him to just set the edge. No, go be a disruptor, right? It's, I view it the way the Steelers play with TJ Watt. People will criticize TJ Watt because, he's not the run defender that Myles Garrett is. And he's not. And that's why Myles Garrett's better than TJ Watt. And part of the reason. But let him go and win that way. Let him work outside in. Let him, take chances and give up his gap at times, because I feel if you're not letting him doing that, you're limiting him as a player. So there's going to be negative run plays with Abdul Carter. Anyone who's saying it's not going to happen is wrong. But there's also going to be 1st and 10s turned into 2nd and 13, and 2nd and 6s turned into 3rd and 9s because you let Abdul Carter go out there and try and stop the run in his own way.
Yeah, man. I just want to see it on the field so bad, especially considering obviously combining Dexter Lawrence on the field, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau. There's no reason this defense shouldn't be better than last year, and we're definitely going to touch on that in a bit. Once again, everyone's in the chat right now. Once again, like up the stream and definitely throw in some questions in the chat right now if you want them to be answered by Bobby and pretty soon. Touching on it for what this free agency class was for the New York Giants with, Joe Shane coming off of a 3-win season. This is obviously prior to drafting Jackson Dart, but we signed Russell Wilson. What are your expectations for a guy like Russell Wilson? Obviously he lost a game in the playoffs last year. He ended off on a bad note. I think that definitely, kind of impeded him getting a better contract. What are you expecting out of Russell Wilson? And he's the best quarterback since who? I know Eli Manning's probably going to be the name thrown out there, but is it better than late Eli Manning? What are we getting?
Hopefully we get a version of Steelers. I'm not going to say Seahawks, because then that's as good as Eli. If we get the Broncos version of Russ, it's not as good as like the best 2 years of Daniel Jones. But I think it's just the best since late Eli Manning. I was on another show. I can't remember which one. I feel bad now, but was talking about like the expectations for Russell Wilson, and I went and did the math and actually put out a tweet today saying the Steelers averaged 23.2 points per game with Russell Wilson at QB last year, which would have been 13th in the NFL, which would feel amazing to have the 13th ranked offense in the NFL. I feel like that should be the expectation, right? Like that 12th to 15th range of offense with Russell Wilson. That doesn't say it's going to be good enough for him to keep his job the entire year, but on paper, you have a better offensive roster than what the Steelers did last year. Like I'm not this. I think people think I'm sometimes a little overly harsh, but I'm very confident saying what the Giants have on offense is better than what the Steelers had last year. And for the Giants' point of view, you better have a better offensive, coaching advantage there too. Or what are we doing here with Brian Dable? So like, if Russ did that last year with lesser weapons and a lesser offensive mind in Arthur Smith, then why shouldn't it be the 12th, 13th ranked offense? And that doesn't mean it's always going to be good. You look at the last 5 games of Russ, and it was like 14 points per game. But that also means that there was games of 40-something points and 38 points and 32 points in there. So, yeah, there'll be bad games with Russ, but the average needs to average out to, like, I think that, that middle of the road, the 13th to 16th best offense, because the Steelers just did it with them.
Yeah, I was telling people, down that stretch, I think George Pickens missed a couple games or missed some time during that stretch as well. And when you think about that offense without George Pickens, what is that offense? I mean, we know how Arthur Smith kind of became a meme of a head coach after, Atlanta and all that. So I'm not going to sit here and say that Russell Wilson is going to be fantastic for us, but comparing him to what we've had the previous couple of years, I mean, we should win some games, like this team should be better. I saw the stat actually going around today. I believe the Giants retained the most players compared to other teams. It was like 91% of their players.
Yeah, Jason Otis from Over the Cap says 91% of the Giants starters return, which is everybody on offense except for the quarterback. And on defense, you lost Pinnock. I guess they returned all their starting corners, even though Adebo is projected to be a starter. And then it's defensive tackle, and then Abdul technically not a starter over Kayvon or Burns at the moment.
Yeah, like that to me says, one, I mean, Joe Shane is really betting on the quarterback position has to change this team. Like the quarterback position has to. That's kind of what that screams to me. You don't see a lot of turnover, and especially with the team that won 3 games and 2 had the worst offense in the league, and we don't really add another weapon in that offense. I mean, some might say Cam Scatterboo. Yeah, it's a lot to hinge on. So hopefully a Russell Wilson can kind of change those things. And once again, I think the expectation, just be better than the worst offense in the league, is not that high of a bar to set, especially considering what we've seen. It's been ugly, man. It's been so bad that I think we kind of forget what a good offense looks like, or even an average one.
Well, when we've had average offenses, it's been like highlight years for us as fans. Like 2022, they were ranked 15th in scoring. Man, did that feel good. 2019, they were ranked 19th with Daniel Jones as QB. And we remember, at least maybe me, it was my first year doing content. So I always remember that year a little more fond than probably most people. But I was I remember Daniel Jones averaging 2 touchdown passes per game. That was a lot of fun. I understand he fumbled the ball, but it was a lot of fun going and clipping up his touchdowns every single week. Because again, he threw touchdowns every single week. And then started having the all-time low touchdown rates. Can you hear that lightning? I'm going through where in Florida are you?
Yeah, I'm Central Florida. Yeah.
Me too. Right. I'm in Brevard County, dude. So we're just getting lit up right now.
Oh, God. I'm Osceola. It was just storming probably an hour ago. And I'm just man, I just hope it doesn't flicker my lights or anything.
Yeah, that
crazy.
Storm probably the same storm that's hitting me right now.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, the first year I was on YouTube was 2022. So I actually went to the Jaguars game when they came down to play in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
And watching a better than or an average offense and seeing what we had on the field was nuts. And then I think we kind of got, not we, but I would say I got sold on, get him a weapon, that whole scream, because we saw him throwing to, I can't even remember 2 of the wide receivers he was throwing to that game, but they're not even on the team anymore.
I think Wandale was on the team, and then Marcus Johnson was. I was actually at that game too, and that was the week we were 6-1 at that point.
Yeah,
and that was the Jags were a playoff team that year. You had beat the Packers, who that year didn't end up going well for them, but they were 3-1 at the time. You beat the Ravens. And so, the whole worst 3-1 team, the worst 4-1 team. Now it's all right, you can call us whatever we want. But we're probably going to the playoffs for the first time in 6 years. So that's going to be pretty exciting. And the way that game ended, it felt like there was a 20-minute final drive by the Jags that kept on getting
Insane.
extended. But that game was the most fun. And like, I hate to go back. if anyone says anything positive now about Daniel Jones, it's like crazy. But like, he was great in that game. Like, I think he won NFC Player of the Week that week too. And Saquon, was really good in that game. So yeah, that was like oh shit. I remember saying on the podcast after the game, it's like, we need to plan a playoff watch party because this is gonna happen.
Yeah, I think it was funny even thinking back to it now, which in the moment I wasn't really thinking about it. Like Ryan just brought up Marcus Johnson getting yelled at by Jones. I remember seeing that pass and I'm just like, God, like these guys are just letting him down. Like he's putting the ball where it needs to be. But I think in the second half he had like 11 passing yards and it was just all on the ground because it was just
Well, they just stopped
Saquon.
throwing it. That last
Yeah.
drive, you remember they ran the same play 8 times in a row. I remember we interviewed Chris Myrick after that year, who was like used as the fullback.
Uh,
And I was like, what was it like when they came into the huddle for like the 7th time in a row calling the same exact play? And he's like, it was working until it didn't.
It literally did. And Daniel Bellinger also got his like eyes poked out that game. That was definitely interesting. So yeah, average quarterback play at least give us that, and who knows what can happen this year. And I'm not gonna say we're gonna do anything in this division because the division is tough, but I think with the quarterbacks in this division and with the competition in this division, it kind of obviously puts whatever the Giants are gonna do on mute a bit. But I hope the best from Russell Wilson, obviously. Other than Russell Wilson, I mean, Russell Wilson is, kind of getting overshadowed by Jackson Dart and such. But other than Russell Wilson, what's the best free agent pickup you like that we added on the team?
I think Adebo. I mean, we did our free agency preview, and I was like, I understand he's coming off the leg injury, but this is the one that makes the most sense. He's young. He gets ball production consistently, and he's not going to get the top like 24 mil per year corner deal that we might have seen. And I think some guys did get like that 22, 23 mil per year deal. So like Paulson Adebo was like, he was my like top want for free agency, and they went out and got him. So I guess I got to be pretty happy with that.
Where do you stand on Javon Holland? Because to me, that was kind of unexpected. I knew they had to address safety somehow, some way, whether it was going to be in the draft. But I mean, obviously, the biggest question is you let Xavier McKinney walk, Javon Holland sign the next year. Where do you stand with like Javon Holland?
Yeah, I'd rather just pay McKinney, but Javon Holland's a good player. But I do think we need more out of Javon Holland. I think his film was very much like, this is a solid safety, but like be more than that. Where early in his career with Brian Flores, he was. I know he had run-ins with Vic Fangio, which, I just watched the Eagles. Like, I'm going to take Vic Fangio's side on that run-in. And then last year, they just kind of used him as like a preventer. So he's very talented, but he needs to be more of a playmaker that he's very capable of. And we've seen flashes of at time. But at the end of the day, like, we're not paying him that money to have no interceptions. And he had 1 interception the last 2 years, and that was on a Hail Mary at the end of the half.
Yeah, and that's definitely like one of his highlights that he touched on, especially making it in MetLife. When I went live when we signed him, and because it was an early Tuesday morning, and I had a lot of Dolphins fans telling me, he started off really good. Obviously his rookie season, I think he had a couple interceptions under his name, but then from there you kind of saw it decline a bit. I just hope. I mean, it should be better play than Jason Pinnock last year, and
Absolutely, it'll be that.
Yeah,
Easily that, yeah.
It just needs to have an impact also on a guy like Tyler Nubin. I think Tyler Nubin is definitely one of the X factors for me on that defense specifically because he didn't have a bad rookie year, but I do want to see more of what he can do in this defense, and hopefully he's put in a position to do that. And at this point, you got pretty big investments in the safety position. And like you said, touching on Paulson Adebo, the DB room has to be better. I mean, it literally has to. Going out and doing what we did last year and not bringing in like anybody to help out the DB room, it was probably one of the biggest mistakes we had last year.
Oh, you saw in Hard Knocks they were sweating on round 2 when the Kool-Aid McKinstry and then Kamari Lassiter were going off the board, and they kind of knew. And then they got to the 3rd round, like, hey, all we have is nickels here, and all of a sudden Cordell flops. They're like, yeah, we got confidence in him in that first OTA session afterwards. So, again, it's on. I think we have Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland, but like you said, this DB room is still predicated on young players stepping up. Yeah. Tyler Nubin, you were the 2nd round pick in the draft. Be the 2nd best player in that draft class, which I would still project him to be that. Drew Phillips, continue to be the good run defender you are. Be better in coverage, right? I didn't think he was very good in coverage last year. He wasn't tested a ton, but he also never got his hands on the football outside that, that one pick against Joe Flacco. And basically every time he was targeted, gave up a catch. I think he gave up like an 80% catch rate or something like that. And then Deonte Banks, be better. You have less of a responsibility, be better. There's no excuse for you to not be a good cornerback 2 in the NFL. We can talk about scheme and cornerback 1 and all that bullshit. You were drafted in the first round. If you can't be a good cornerback 2 in this scheme, then you're just a bad player.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's something I really hinge on, where I let people know. A lot of people scream at me, that was Wink's guy, that wasn't Shane Bowen's guy, or anything. When you're taking in the first round, when you're taking in the second round, you should be a talented player to at least perform where you can kind of make it in this league. Obviously, we know busts happen. It is what it is. But we have heavy investments in, once again, the offensive line, the defense. Guys got to pretty much perform. I know what it is with scheme, and coaches got to set these players up in the best position, but to be arguably unplayable, and you saw Deonte Banks having his moments where he had to get benched because he's not, giving effort. It's BS. The guys got to, at the end of the day, kind of, I hope they have some dignity for themselves to be out there and at least play a little bit. It's not just all a Giants thing.
Yeah, be better. Like it's at the end of the day, it's on you. It's not Jerome Henderson. I don't think it's Jerome Henderson's fault. It's on Deonte Banks to be a better player. You have a lesser responsibility. You have easier help within the scheme. Be a better player.
Yeah, unfortunately, Henderson got clipped in the process of it. But speaking on that, obviously they wanted Shane Bowen gone. I think the common conception for fans were Shane Bowen. Do you think Shane Bowen can handcuff this defense? I mean, when you look at what the Giants did in this offseason, they invested a lot. They obviously drafted Darius Alexander. They invested money in Javon Holland, Paulson Adebo. We know what they have already with Brian Burns, Kayvon, and then you draft Abdul Carter. What should this defense be? And I think the casual take for not just a New York Giants fan, any fan, is like, the Giants always have a great defense. And sometimes I can let them know, like, hey, I don't think so. But there's kind of really not that many excuses for this team heading into this year. Where do you see this defense being? And can Shane Bowen really like handcuff this defense?
Bowen has been like what you put in was what you get out type of defensive coordinator. So like he had no number 1 defense in Tennessee, and they had middle of the road defense in Tennessee. I think schematically we saw like the same exact things that we saw from him in Tennessee, where it's like 4-man rush. We're going to run a lot of stunts, and we're going to run some pretty basic coverages. So I don't know exactly what we're going to get out of Shane Bowen, because I wasn't expecting him to do too much of exotic stuff last year with the personnel he had, but he could have done more. But now you have that personnel. Now you have Javon Holland, you have Tyler Nubin, who's a second-year player, and even whatever your expectation for Tyler Nubin is, we know he's an extremely smart player, and you can at least ask him to do different things. You have Paulson Adebo, who gets turnovers. You have this run defending nickel and Drew Phillips. And then you have, a couple good linebackers and a really good front four to get after it. Like, they should be a top 10 defense, right? Like, we're talking about the offense being middle of the road. They should be a top 10 defense with that talent. If they lose Dexter Lawrence or Paulson Adebo, then it becomes very questionable. And that can certainly happen. But like on paper, without any injuries happening, they should be able to compete. And you have all these different pieces there's so many different things you can do. Like we talked about Abdul Carter, using him in different ways before. Paulson Adebo, he didn't get all these interceptions by just being this beast of a corner. He's a good corner, but the Saints let him cheat and take chances. So you got to put him in situations to cheat and take chances as well. And let these guys press up. So Shane Bowen, I think, needs to adjust to the personnel he has, and the defense. The expectation should be high.
Yeah, I'm kind of honestly surprised a bit that we don't see a lot of former Titan players fitting on this defense, potentially trying to help other people kind of get what this scheme is. But I think a year 2 in the scheme should be a little bit better. They had their rough moments last year, but I mean, you think about the first game against the Commanders, that was super early, but I mean, they kind of put themselves in a position to win that game, especially a couple of different games that happened down the stretch as well. So the defense, once again, I think top 10 should be the floor for this team. Hopefully, it's hard to pencil that in because, I mean, top 10 defense, you hope you're winning games, but that's just what they invested into this team. That's what it kind of has to be. So looking at this team, right, and looking at, this is year 4 with Brian Daboll and Joe Shane. I think we imagined it should be a little bit different than what it is now. If you were to stack up this roster compared to the other 3 seasons you've seen out of Joe Shane, where do you kind of put this roster? Is it better than all of the rosters from the previous years? Does it find itself within the middle?
It's the
And
best.
try to
Yeah.
take quarterback out of it a bit.
Well,
But
even yeah, I think with or without quarterback, it is the best roster that is. You know, the 2022 roster. They had some some good players on that team, but we forget how bad. We just talked about Marcus Johnson and shit. Like Isaiah Hodgins was a godsend for that team.
yeah,
That was a pretty damn bad roster. I definitely think this is the best roster, right? Like at least you have like middle at very little, at the very minimum, last year's draft class has middle of the road players, but you just look at like player for player. I definitely think it is, and I actually think they downgraded as a roster last year. 2023 when you lost Saquon, McKinney, and there was other losses too. Because every year before week 1, I do like last year's roster to this one, and I was like, this kind of feels worse than what it was last year. And they lost Darren Waller, obviously, as part of that too. We looked at Daniel Jones and probably a lesser light 1 year later. So, but I definitely think this is the best one. I don't think it's the highest bar to clear, but I feel confident this is the best roster that Joe Shane has put together.
Yeah, and I had Authentic on the channel probably a couple weeks ago, and something that he made note of. He feels like Joe Shane is learning on the job. That's something that he was kind of going by and letting everyone know that, hey, I think Joe Shane is learning from his mistakes. And you see it with Javon Holland. Addressing the running back position is kind of funny in that point. Do you feel like the same sentiment with Joe Shane and currently looking at what this roster is?
Not necessarily. Like they did sign Javon Holland, but that also wasn't their plan. Their plan was to spend big money on guard, and that didn't happen. And then Javon Holland didn't get the contract that he was looking for, and they pivoted to that. So that wasn't really a plan. Like, they've still drafted one offensive lineman in the last 2 years, with that being Marcus Bowe, and they've drafted 2 in the last 3 years with John Michael Schmitz. We did a 2026 free agency preview instead of talking about the same stuff over and over again last week, and we spent 20 minutes on the offensive line because like Jermaine Illuminor, we don't know. Like we'll see what happens with Bo. Guard is a question, and then center is a question too. So like I don't know if the offensive line has been fully addressed, even though they did spend money on a backup tackle and James Hudson. I at least like bringing back Greg Van Roten instead of going into camp. The way I guess there is improvements of the addressing of the offensive line this year, but that's because last year's was like unbelievable. The fact that they were just planning on Evan Neal being a good right tackle and Jermaine Illuminor playing guard, and Evan Neal not being ready for camp was a huge blessing in disguise for them. So, yeah, I mean, he's definitely learned some things, but I don't know if it's like I don't think he's signaled this like big meteor size like adjustment in his belief in things, because in the day, like he didn't spend big, and I'm not asking him to either, but he didn't spend big money on a run. He drafted a running back in the 4th round. That's something they did. That's something they did in Buffalo. They drafted running backs literally 3 years in a row. Joe Shane's done that as well with the Giants, with Eric Gray, Tracy, and Scatterbo, just basically 1 round later than, or 2 rounds later than what Buffalo did, where they went third, second. Shane has went 5th, 4th. So I just hope he's gotten better at just being a talent evaluator, as simple as that, and getting the right players in there. And Sean Sullivan says in the chat, Azudu's still at tackle, which I don't really care anymore. I've given up totally on Azudu, but he should just be at guard.
Yeah, using a stutter is crazy, but yeah, put him at offensive tackle. Got to be one of the most questionable things I think you think about with him. I'm not gonna sit here and say Azudu would have been a great guard either, but I mean, not even give him a chance is crazy. Evan Neal at guard. Are we liking that, or are we thinking he could actually
take a
make it on the
swing?
field?
I don't believe in it, but take a chance, right? Like, see if you get something out of him. I thought Greg Van Roten at his press conference had a really good answer. He's like, yeah, but you got to be thinking a lot faster. You don't have as much time to think. It's more responsibility schematically, where tackle is a lot more of just like, this is your guy, where like the mental part of the game has not been great for Evan Neal. It's not just, he doesn't have the feed or he's top heavy. Those are parts of it. But like he made a lot of mental mistakes too. So I don't think being a guard helps with that. I remember, working like, it's like trying to learn, I played tackle and then I try and learn the guard stuff. The guard stuff is a lot more like post snap reacting to what the defense is doing, where the tackle, 8 times out of 10, you're just blocking that edge rusher, right? And you may, if they get like 6-man rushes, then you may do something different. So I don't think it's going to work, but I think it's at least worth a shot. Like go spend camp doing it. If it's really bad through camp, then you see if you get somebody to do some type of pick swap at the end of the camp. But it's at least worth a shot.
Yeah, Evan Neal, I mean, I know he's kind of became more of a meme now, and it's all about, stance change first. But he's a guy that, ironically, so at my job, because Evan Neal grew up in Okeechobee, not too far from here. So he went to school with him younger. He showed me a yearbook photo. He's like, hey, he's going to be a legend for you guys. And we know how it panned out. And one of the things that we think about with 2022, I mean, he was hurt a lot of that year. Came back, I believe, late in the year. I think the Jaguars game, he might have went down actually, or maybe the week prior. And that time could have been crucial. I'm not going to sit here and say that he would have been a lot better, but he missed so much time during that rookie year. And you can say that the Giants had a good year that year with him, but he kind of missed a good piece. Evan Neal's the one that hurts. It really does.
Yeah, I mean, even like the Vikings game, as good as that was, a lot of the good plays in that game was like Evan Neal beat around the corner. Daniel Jones runs up through the pocket and like either runs or hits Isaiah Hodge. I feel like that happened like 8 different times in that game where Neal getting beat forced DJ to make like either run or throw decision, and it just worked out every time.
Yeah, man, take me back. And we might have to take ourselves back in a second. One of the first questions we're going to touch on right here. Question for both of you. What was your favorite Giants moment other than the Super Bowl wins? I mean, this is kind of what I hold on to over any other fan, is that I've seen my team win twice, but we're kind of getting far from it. If I was to say my favorite Giants moment other than that, I mean, I think I have to say the 2022, obviously playoff win against the Vikings. You had the letdown with Eli Manning and Odell in the playoffs, and that was literally the only other time we made it to the playoffs other than that year since the Super Bowl. So I'll hinge on that. My brother's also a Vikings fan, so I was watching the game with him. And what funnier is it than the number 1 seed Vikings to go down in that fashion?
Yeah, that's tough because my question is, can we use like the playoff games from that Super Bowl year? And I feel like that's kind of cheating if that's the case. But I'll discount those. So the Ravens Super Bowl team, that was like the first Super Bowl I ever watched. I didn't really watch football at that time.
Yeah.
But that was the first Super Bowl I watched. So I'm not going to count that. And then, they made the playoffs with Kerry Collins the year they lost to the 49ers in the Rich Soibert game. That one's an old school one. But that's the thing with Eli, is we did win 2 Super Bowls, but we didn't win other playoff games with Eli outside those Super Bowls. So it's like you don't have like some of those big moments. I'm trying. You know what? I'm cheating. I am using one of the Super Bowl years to beating the Cowboys in 2011 on that Sunday Night Football game to go to the playoffs. Or you can even use the Jason Pierre-Paul field goal block against the Cowboys. That's a huge moment there too. So I'll say that. And I'll do a sentimental one is 2019. I was there for the Dolphins game, not on purpose. It was the only game I went to that year. It's actually my first game in MetLife. And it happened to be Eli Manning's last game. So that was like a cool moment to be there when we beat their ass. So they were able to like take him out of the game and all that too. So that was a cool moment.
Yeah, I think Saquon had a couple of touchdowns that game too. I definitely remember that one a bit. I wish I had more moments seeing them in person. I've only seen them twice in person, and I booked, and we're going to touch on the schedule in a second. I booked some tickets way well in advance, and it was when they went to Miami. Booked it super advanced. Obviously,
Mike
it was
Glennon
later in the
game.
season. Mike Glennon. I paid tickets to go watch Mike Glennon. I was sitting on the lower bowl too, and I got people heckling at me. I'm like, bro, I'm watching Mike Glennon right now, trying to get Kenny Galladay the ball. I wish I spent my money, obviously on more memorable games. So mine are only shared on the TV. On that playoff run, the 2011 one, the most memorable game I had for some reason was like the 1 p.m. Falcons game. Hakeem Nicks doing the dirty bird in the end zone is definitely what I stick to. And I was a big Hakeem Nicks fan around that time. I know Victor Cruz had the salsa, but Hakeem Nicks was actually pretty solid for us.
Yeah, I think he has one of the most yards in a playoff run ever. I know Larry Fitzgerald probably still has the record, but like
it might be that one because he didn't do too much in the Super Bowl, if I remember. I think Victor Cruz had the touchdown in the Super Bowl, but Hakeem Nicks didn't show up there, but he showed up every other game. He caught a Hail Mary against the Packers.
The Packers, yeah.
Man.
And he had another touchdown in that game too. So let's see. Yeah, it's third all time. Oh, so I was right. It was second until Cooper Kupp in 21. And then Larry Fitzgerald that year, they won the Super Bowl, went to the Super Bowl against the Steelers, was number one, which was an unbelievable run. I don't know how much of you remember that. That was just like Larry Fitzgerald just took over those playoffs.
Yeah, no,
obviously he has the record, but yeah.
For me, that was like the most memorable Madden game. That cover with him and Troy Polamalu was insane, but that whole run was crazy.
Yeah, that was a good Madden too. And that James Harrison pick six at the end of the half on Kurt Warner is like, it doesn't get talked about, but it is one of the greatest plays in Super Bowl history. Because it's at minimum, it's a 10-point swing. And that was a game where the Steelers won it on the last drive of the game. The Cardinals would have a Super Bowl if that play doesn't happen, most likely.
Yeah, people talk about, I feel like the San Antonio Holmes catch kind of gets put above it.
Great play, but James Harrison's playing that was like so much bigger, and it was just better. And James Harrison was supposed to rush the passer, knew what he was running, and drop back into coverage, and then had that pick. James Harrison was also like my favorite player in the NFL at the time because he was so anti some of the new rules. And I just liked seeing him. I was a little more savage as a fan at that point, where I just liked him, seeing him knock dudes unconscious.
Yeah.
So I was a big James Harrison fan.
Yeah, it was funny when he kind of did his like redemption, where I think he went and played for the Bengals for a bit, and then came back to the Steelers.
Yep.
Those reps of him doing his I think I can't remember what it was, but a bench press with like resistance bands and 4 plates.
It's unbelievable how strong that dude is. He might be I'd have to think about that, but he's one of the best UDFAs of all time. He finished with the Patriots too. You forget that as well.
Oh yeah. No, I completely forgot about that part, honestly. So yeah, we got, once again, everyone in the chat right now, type in your questions if you got them already. We're gonna be covering them in a second. Looking at what the schedule is for us, and I hate to be the guy to talk about predictions and let me know what it is now, because so much can change from now until then. Unfortunately, you can see injuries happen and whatever. A lot of people are talking about the Giants having one of the hardest schedules. I think when you think about the Giants being a bad team and going against good teams, I mean, it's going to look like the hardest schedule in the world. I think football changes every single year, and you can have teams fall off. So that whole winning percentage sometimes I feel like gets wavered. What is your stance on the schedule, and how do you feel with the Giants obviously going into it?
I mean, it is really tough. Like even like you said, some of these things will change and stuff, but like it's gonna need some serious things to change for like the Giants to be better than a lot of these teams. And that's where like I get they could steal some games, but they could also lose some games that they're supposed to. Like that's where I do have a little hard time getting as excited about the season, and might get a little more excited for when Jackson Dart eventually plays. Like I can't predict it. Like it close to a winning season for this team, and if they win 8 games, I'll say these guys deserve a year 5 as GM and head coach. But like I get like, let's forget even predictions. Let's just go through it. Games will they be favored in? Commanders, no. Cowboys, no. Chiefs, no. Chargers, no. Saints, maybe. Eagles, no. Broncos, no. Eagles, no. 49ers, no. Bears, no. But I think they could win. That's a more fair opponent. Packers, no. Lions, no. Patriots, let's say yes. Commanders, no. Vikings, no. Raiders, yes, maybe. Like that's 4 games where they might be favored if we looked at, odds right now. And there's probably 2 of those games where they win it, like the Bears and the Raiders, where they might be favored.
So even in an 8-9 season, which I don't know if we have Kadarius Toney's burner in here or something, but Christopher Toney says, I'm looking at 8-9 season. Do you think that's still a record where Jackson Dart comes into the season? Because I mean, I can make
no, because there's 7 playoff teams. Now, again, that 8-9, you could get there very different ways. You could be, 5-7, and you say, you know what, let's go to Dart, and then you go, 3-2 at the end of the season or whatever. So like, obviously that could, but I think if they're consistently around 500, I don't think we see Jackson Dart, because I think they'll actually be battling for a playoff spot. So, and again, I think I was talking with somebody else, and it was like, what should be what record would say they deserve to get another year? I think 8-9 should be that. If it's year 4, I don't want to hear about the schedule and all that. Year 4, you've got 3 quarterbacks who you brought in. Go be 8-9 at least.
I think at least, and you kind of threw this in there a little bit, so I want to touch on it. Do you think that Brian Daboll needs a season like that to be back next year? I mean, some people are obviously saying he's tied with Jackson Dart, so he has to get that other year. Do you feel like a season like that needs to happen for him to be the coach next year?
It's really hard to predict, because again, in the offseason right now, we can all talk about hypotheticals and be more reasonable. That all changes when stuff starts flying. And if they're losing games that way, I don't see how the same people now are saying given patience are going to want him gone, And here I was someone who said they shouldn't have fired Pat Shermer after 2019. And I was definitely being on the band of like, do not fire him and then keep Dave Gettleman. That's crazy. Do not do that. Either fire them both or keep them both. It's just hard to. I think he does need a season like that to keep his job, because we're not gonna give a damn about the schedule. We're not gonna be week 15 being like, oh well, it was a tough schedule, guys. We're gonna be pissed off that a year 4 regime is not doing what they're supposed to. So I do think he needs that more to survive than what people would like to think in their heads right now. Where last year at this time, even hinting at them losing their jobs was like, what? There's no way of that possibly happening. And look at how last year ended up playing out.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm kind of stuck on it, where I think he's almost like booked for the following year. I think it has to be a complete train wreck for him to be gone, and only because I thought this past year was abysmal. I thought he was a dead man walking for the last couple weeks for sure, and for him to be back after that, I can understand because they were even thinking about keeping Joe Shane and letting Brian Daboll go, where I'm just like, I mean, here we go again. But yeah, I think he would need like a train wreck year, and everyone's going to be hinging on, especially if Jackson Dart looks solid. I mean, like solid in the last couple games. They're going to be like, bring this guy back and at least have him another year with the rookie quarterback. So
Dart is also like, if it's not going good win-loss record and you play Dart and Dart looks good, then that's a different story as well too. So it all depends on how it looks. So it's kind of impossible to be like, if they win 6 games, but like, it's just, we kind of got to see it and how it feels in the moment. So, and I think year 4 regime, they should have higher expectations than winning 6 games.
It gotta be, yeah. At least I would hope. For anyone that cares, the Knicks are up double digits almost at halftime. So I know a lot of people probably watching that game right now. We'll revisit this if that happens. We can touch on this real quick. Do you think the offense is scoring an average of 26 points a game? I'm gonna go ahead and say no. Where do you stand on that?
No, I mean, I did the Russ thing being 13th in the NFL. 26 would be like top 5, wouldn't it? I'm looking it up right now.
No, that would have to be pretty good, especially.
Yeah, we'd be we would have, that would have been more than the Vikings last year. So my answer is a clear no.
Yeah, at least 26.
If it does, I'm fucking thrilled. I'm the happiest man. Can average 26 points per game.
And hopefully we're walking into the playoffs at that point. Shout out to Ryan. I know you were on a show not too long ago. Will Jalen Hyatt have more success now than he has with Russ at quarterback? And was he being held back by bad quarterback play and coaching in the past, or is he just a bust? I'm going to be honest. I think Jalen Hyatt, I mean, we know what he is with his speed, and we know what he can be as a wide receiver. We hopefully think he can be. As much as people talk about the quarterback play, I did think it held him back a bit, but I also feel like he doesn't really do too much that warrants more targets or even more attempts. Of course, I want to see them try to throw out the ball to him, but I'm not going to sit here and say he's a bust, but I do feel like they kind of mishandled him a bit.
I do think he's a bust, but I also think Russ is the perfect quarterback for him because he's so sideline deep oriented, and that's what Jalen Hyatt does well, and it's the only thing that Jalen Hyatt does well. Where I think Hyatt can have another like 300 to 400 yard year, but I think that's kind of what he's tapped out as a player, because at the end of the day, he's not someone who can run the full route tree, and if you can't run the full route tree, if you can't get off press, then I can't put you on the field. I can't put you on the field as anything more than an alert route, and that's what Jalen Hyatt is. So now again, you can have big games like that with that type of player. That speed is real. It is a different level than most guys in the NFL. And when it hits, it's more fun than, a receiver who's really good at the quick game hitting. So I think there's a much more use for him now that Russ is the QB. But at the end of the day, I don't see myself ever looking at him as a viable starting option.
Yeah, well, I'm ship sailed. I think some of those balls last year too. I mean, you would want him to fight on an attempt like that. They weren't perfect though, for sure. So we'll see if Hyatt contributes. I'm kind of just so over it, honestly. I want another guy, to be alongside Malik. I think everyone knows about Wandale getting all those targets but not getting any yards. But I really just want another running mate with him. And everyone's going on the tangent with wide receiver duos in the NFC East, and then you just got Malik. So I think Malik, once again, he's a wide receiver where it doesn't really matter what the quarterback play is. He's going to get his. I want another guy like that potentially. So we'll see. Shout out Jabari in the chat, man. He's saying, how many divisional games do we win this year?
How
And
about at least
it's
one, and
brutal.
let it be week one. This is where I think the Cowboys are underrated by a lot of people right now. The Eagles, we all know are good. The Commanders, they still are a defense that lacks a lot of talent. Like, you go look at their defensive depth chart and tell me you're impressed by that at all. Now, they have a great coaching staff on defense with Dan Quinn that knows how to take advantage, and they find guys in their mold and use them. And they have some veteran presence that gets guys in the right place. But that defense, I'm just not worried about at all. Like, if the Giants don't have a good offensive game against the Commanders' defense, I'm looking at the Giants inward on that. Now they have Jaden Daniels and they added Laremy Tunsil and then drafted Josh Connolly and added Debo, so that the offense can take a step forward, and that, they need to outscore teams, and they may be able to do that. But I think the Commanders are very beatable. The Cowboys with Dak, the Giants just haven't beat them in almost 10 years. I'm just not predicting that, and then I'm not predicting them to beat the Eagles. But I think the Commanders, like, that we want to talk about, like, guys keeping their job and stuff. You can't go 0-6 against the division. You have to win 1 or 2 games in this division this year.
I think week one definitely is one of the more winnable games too. And I think what hurts more is knowing that the Commanders used to be at least a shoo-in for us. And now, I mean, we're looking at the rest of the teams, like you're saying, 0-6. You could see it being 0-6. You would hope it wouldn't be. But for sure, at least splitting with Washington. And I know the Eagles technically are our last game. If it's a comp out where they're kind of out of the playoff run and we win that one, I mean, I don't know if it really matters, but yeah, 1-2 for sure. I hope for the Cowboys at least. At least I hope for the Cowboys. Shout out to Jimmy, man. I know they just rolled this out as a potential award. Andrew Thomas, Protector of the Year. I hope he's healthy enough to be in consideration for that. Obviously one of the only, I think, accolades for offensive linemen. Can you see that happening?
It's tough. The Giants would have to be good to get that. So I don't see that happening as much as I'm like the Andrew Thomas, leader of the fan club. When you have guys like Lane Johnson, Trent Williams, and other cats. So I think he can get all pro again, which is awesome, especially at that left tackle position. But Protector of the Year, I feel like you got to be great and also on a good team, unless you're like Joe Thomas.
Yeah, and I mean, even thinking about the Commanders, I mean, adding Laremy Tunsil on that team too, it's like, dang, man, like the rich get a little bit richer.
Protect his Jaden Daniels blind side like that is a huge addition for them. I think it's their biggest addition of the offseason with Laremy Tunsil.
Commanders making smart moves. Sucks to see. Get that KT merch out on GNS for sure. Go ahead and run that up. Do you think they're sitting Malik to see high with more reps? I don't believe so. Yeah, I don't think on that at all. After the offseason move, what is the weakness of the defense you are worried about? Yeah, I'll let you take off on this one.
I'll say overall it's the run defense. I don't think they did really anything to improve the run defense. Now, again, we had the Carter conversation, so like that's improvements there, but it's not the improvements that like they fully needed. Darius Alexander, I don't think he really improves the run defense year one. He can get there, but like I watched him against Illinois, who was like the best competition he played over the last couple of years, and like they were working him in the run game. And he's not very good against double teams, and at defensive tackle, you're going to face a ton of double teams. And then like Paulson Adebo's not the best run defender. Javon Holland's a good run defender, but I don't think they made these big changes to make the run defense better.
Yeah, and even touching on it, I know this topic doesn't get brought up too much, especially considering some guys find him as a fan favorite. And I learned through your video today, potentially not in-house. The linebacker position kind of worries me a bit. I think Bobby Okereke definitely, regressed this past year compared to the previous. And you would hope that he at least brings it back up, but it's a lot to hope for. I mean, he's definitely young enough to still do it. He's not old and outdated, but it's just the production we were getting out of there last year was not great, especially when you're not turning the ball over and guys are just running the ball. I mean, that's another reason why we didn't have all those interceptions. I mean, the amount of times that they're just running the ball down the field on us definitely sucked. And I hope the linebackers can kind of make a better impact. Maybe Abdul Carter, plays a role within that, but the linebacker position is kind of a little worrisome for me.
Yeah. That's a big swing where I could see it being really good where, 2023, like you said, it was a fun linebacker room. And then last year it struggled. So that's like a big swing in this defense too. Is what level of play do we get from those two guys?
Yeah, man. And my last question for you, man. What games are you looking to go to this year? What is the games you're marking down? I'll be transparent. I've never been to a MetLife game, and it's only because we got to take a hike to get there. So what games are you kind of eyeing? I was even looking at week one potentially because I'm like, hey, maybe it's not too far and it wouldn't be too crazy, and at least it would be exciting in the beginning. I'm not trying to have we don't have Mike Glennon, but a late season situation where the season's lost and stuff. So what games are you kind of eyeing for yourself?
So I'm actually where I don't like the early season games because I don't want any realization of like the season's over or whatever. Um, so I like to go to late November, early December. So I'm going to go to the December 14th game against the Commanders, and I like the end towards the end of the season because you're either in the playoff hunt and we're locked in trying to make the playoffs, or they're totally out of it. So you're just there to have a good time and enjoy the experience of a tailgate in the day. So that's where I've picked that game as the game I'm going to go to. Maybe I'll go to more. We'll see. It's got to make things work. It's like you said, it's a hike getting up there. But December 14th against the Commanders is the game I was going to. I did think about making the trip to Landover for the Commanders until it was week one. I was like, I got to be home for a week one game.
Got you. Even the Vikings one kind of intrigues me a bit because I'm like JJ McCarthy and Jackson Dart. I mean, number 6 and number 6 potentially. Maybe you could see that actually taking place. That kind of excited me a bit. But you let me know. Once again, I've never been in MetLife. Is a nosebleed like seat worth it to go at a game? Because that's another thing. I mean, if I'm flying out there, I don't know if I want to be in that situation.
Nosebleeds in the middle is great.
Uh,
You don't want to go to the corners. That's where it's a little harder to seed. But like if you're up high and you're like towards like between the 40 and 40, I think it's almost you see the game better from that compared to up close. Where up close is more of a fun fan experience, but if you're just like actually trying to see how the game plays out, up there is perfect. So I actually think as much as MetLife sucks as it has like no amenities and stuff, it is one of the more accessible stadiums where it is like it's a joke. It's like just a big gray piece of concrete, but that also makes it where it's like you don't have to wait in lines to get out of the stadium, and getting in, you get to your seat quickly. And the parking lot, you're not having to walk through people's yards and
yeah.
check your GPS on your phone. It's simply just all around the stadium. Remember what section you are and walk towards it.
Yeah. I mean, when I went to, and granted, when you're in New York, or I know it's in New Jersey, but a lot of people are not driving anyways. When I went to the Miami game, I ended up parking in front of someone's house thinking it was a spot.
Oh, Jacksonville is the worst, dude.
Oh,
Jacksonville is we couldn't even find like the people we were trying to link up with in Jacksonville. It's like there's no signs of anything anywhere. And that stadium, it takes you 20 minutes to walk out of that stadium. It becomes like a traffic jam going down the ramps. Like that, Jacksonville may actually be the worst stadium in the NFL. I haven't been to the Commanders one, so maybe that's the one people say, but I don't think a lot of people have been to the Jacksonville one. The Jacksonville one generally does stink.
yeah, I have the video on my channel from years ago, but I was getting cooked sitting on like the wayside because one side has the shade, one side doesn't.
Yep.
I was getting cooked, but for parking, they have like a fairgrounds where you can park there, and they actually have a shuttle that takes you there. So that one's not too bad. I wanted to see potentially Travis Hunter, over there, but obviously we're not playing them this year, so maybe next year we'll see on that. But yeah, man, appreciate you for jumping on overall, and excited to see what the Giants do and obviously what goes on your channel. Once again, subscribe to Giants Nation Show if you haven't seen it already. Giants Nation Pod. What you got coming up soon? If there is anything, I know we're kind of heading in. Once again, June is slow a bit, but what you got cooking up?
Yeah, so I'm finishing up these Jackson Dart, individual game breakdowns. And then on socials, I'm kind of doing the same things I did in 2019 with Daniel Jones. Is right now I'm going through all the third downs of Jackson Dart, and we'll put that all together as one project. And then I'm going to move on to the deep passes and stuff. So just kind of going back through Jackson Dart stuff. I have a goal of watching every throw like 7 times. So just, taking advantage of the rookie QB, covering OTAs and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, kind of itching for training camp to be back.
Yeah. Are you making it out to training camp?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you to Body Armor. We're going to be out of training camp.
That's awesome. I don't mean to jump into too much, but I don't know if there's gonna be a face off or something. We'll see on that part. But
you got to make it. I know you're in Florida. Training camp is one of the more fun times to just like be a fan of the team and cover the team and stuff.
Yeah, I might look at, honestly, and it's a free event too. I think just to be
Yeah,
there, I
yeah.
think for the most part. So
Just
I might
make it like some type of like New York vacation, and then hit some training camp practice. It's my favorite time of the year to cover the team.
100%. Once again, man, shout out to everyone in the chat right now. Shout out to everyone that watched. Appreciate Bobby Skinner for jumping on. Stay tuned for more content coming through, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.